Looks like we are about to see a very big change in the food we eat. Secretary of Health Robert F. Kennedy Jr. today announcing he's phasing out of 8 artificial dyes in U.S. food supply.
What you're looking at right here is a live look as the Trump administration officials announce a ban of 8 petroleum-based dyes, building on the Biden administration's plan to ban red dye number 3 by 2028.
Today, the FDA is taking action to remove petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply and from medications. For the last 50 years, American children have increasingly been living in a toxic soup of synthetic chemicals. The scientific community has conducted a number of studies raising concerns about the correlation between petroleum-based synthetic dyes and several health conditions, such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, obesity, diabetes, insulin resistance, cancer, genomic disruption, GI issues, as I've seen in the hospital, and allergic reactions.
What are these food dyes actually doing to kids especially?
Yeah, well, if you look at the ingredients for Fruit Loops 20 years ago, it was very, very different than it is today. And today we use chemicals in Fruit Loops that are banned in virtually every country in the world. So if you buy Fruit Loops today in Canada, it is made with vegetable dyes. If you buy it here in the United States, it's made with petroleum synthetics. And as I said in that clip, nobody wants to eat petroleum. When we went to meet with the food companies, I said to my staff, you know, if they want to eat petroleum, they should put it in their food themselves at home. They shouldn't be feeding it to Americans who, without their knowledge, without their consent. And today we announced that we're going to get it out of the food. So there are 9 dyes, Jesse. 2 of them we're going to ban immediately, orange bee and red dye 2. We're going to accelerate the removal of red dye 3, so we're going to bring it down to under a year. And the other 6 dyes, within 18 months, we hope to get them out of all the food. And that's just the beginning. I mean, one of the problems is that the science about these additives has been systematically suppressed for 30 years because the industry has been running this agency. And we're getting rid of all of those conflicts. We've gotten rid of most of them. And we're going to do real science. And we're going to do science precisely on the issues that Americans care about, making sure their kids are getting food that isn't poison. The food our kids are eating today is not really food. It's food-like substances. And some of it was made in petroleum refineries. And we need to give our kids real food again.
The FDA announcing a new plan to phase out 8 petroleum-based artificial colors from the nation's food supply. Doctors citing mixed studies linking them to potential neural and behavioral issues.
Increased hyperactivity, reduced attention span, irritability, sleep disturbances.
The dyes are widely used in foods in the U.S. Their removal would constitute a major change for American food companies, which claim they are safe.
If they want to eat petroleum, they ought to add it themselves at home. But they shouldn't be feeding it to the rest of us.
In January, the FDA announced it would phase out the dye known as Red 3, used in candies and some medications, after finding it increased cancer rates in lab rats. Many companies already use natural color substitutes for food sold in Canada and Europe. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has vowed to make removing artificial ingredients a priority for his agency.
Food dye is just a no-brainer. Nobody wants to eat petroleum.
Kennedy is pushing for the dyes to be phased out by the end of 2026.
For companies that are currently using petroleum-based red dye, try watermelon juice.
Because we were tough, we had what my uncle called this beef jerky toughness. That was responsible for our country being the land of the brave and the home of the free. The greatest industrial power in the world. The wealthiest country. We owned half the wealth on earth when my uncle was president, and part of that was because of the vigor of our society. And that's one of the reasons he started the Presidential Council on Physical Fitness, because he saw that he felt that Americans were getting soft. and it was going to steal from us and erode all of our leadership, our moral authority, and our values, and our role as an exemplary nation. And since his death, we've had this extraordinary chronic disease epidemic. When my uncle was president, 3% of American kids had chronic disease. Today, it's around 60%. And these are a broad category, the ones that Marty mentioned, like ADHD, the neurological disorders, ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, tics, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, and autism. All of these are injuries that I never heard of when I was a kid. They were not part of the nomenclature. They weren't part of the dialogue. There was zero spent in this country treating chronic disease when my uncle was president. Today it's about $1.8 trillion annually. It's bankrupting our nation. 74% of American kids cannot qualify for military service. So how are we going to maintain our global leadership with such a sick population? We have all these autoimmune diseases, these exotic diseases, and again, I never heard of juvenile diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, Crohn's disease, and 100 others that were just unknown when I was a kid. I never knew anybody with a peanut allergy. I never knew anybody with a food allergy. Why do 5 of my 7 kids have allergies? I never knew of anybody who had eczema. I knew of a very small number of children who had asthma, but that has exploded as well today. And our fertility is dropping dramatically. Teenagers in this country today have the same testosterone levels as 68-year-old men. Our girls are reaching puberty 6 years early, from 10 to 14 years old. And this is existential for our country. And we have to address it. And one of the problems, when I met with, and I want to commend the food companies for working with us to achieve this agreement or this settlement. And when I went in a few months or about a month ago to meet with the food companies, I was talking with my staff about these petroleum-based dyes, and I said, if they want to add petroleum, if they want to eat petroleum, they ought to add it themselves at home. But they shouldn't be feeding it to the rest of us. And without our knowledge or consent. And unfortunately, we are going to get rid of the dyes, and then one by one, we're going to get rid of every ingredient and additive in food that we can legally address. One of the problems is that the industry, which all of these industries, cast a dark shadow historically over this agency. And there's so many conflicts that we are now systematically eliminating. That has allowed them to suppress the science. There's shockingly few studies, even on food dyes, and on all these other ingredients as well. And Jay Bhattacharya, who is here and who is running the director of NIH, is now narrowly targeting these kind of food additives for scientific study.
I also encourage parents who are trying to be a healthy diet and also struggle with finding foods that their kids would enjoy having is, bringing into the library, picking out a cookbook together, picking out recipes, and making meals so that the kids also feel empowered.
Several dyes have been linked to behavioral issues in children or have been shown to cause cancer in mice, not yet in humans, but other countries have already banned the additives.
Are you surprised it's taken the United States this long to do this?
Yes. Honestly, I was really surprised because I didn't start noticing these things until I had a kid.
The FDA is also partnering with the National Institutes of Health to find out what those dyes are really doing to children.